Hello and welcome to.
Please clarify.
I'm Emily,
And I'm Kalen.
and we're your hosts.
And thank you for tuning in today. We are so excited that y'all have come back for yet another
Yes,
episode.
yes, episode 3.
Episode 3, we did it. We're doing it. One of the ways that we kind of just started up our time here is, I think, just to do a general check in and see how you're doing, like, how we're
Mhm.
doing. And a friend recently texted me this question and I really loved
Ooh,
it. But she said,
okay.
"How's your spirit?"
That's a very good question. Today, I would say, to be honest, sometimes this really even can vary hour to hour.
Quite literally.
But I think in general, especially now, my spirit is pretty good. I think that there
Mm,
have been a lot of just nothing terrible, but just a lot of different things that come up. And I think, as we've discussed before, the weight of a lot of things, even if they're smaller, can feel bigger and just amplified at this moment in time specifically. But in general, my spirit is feeling, if I had to say a phrase that captures it, maybe tired but strong is how it currently
mm,
feels. Tired but strong. Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I
I
am,
like that.
yes. What about you?
Yeah, I love that, tired but strong. Like, honoring that your physical body like might need a break, or even
Mm,
your mental space might need a break, but like also knowing that you have the strength that you're being poured into to get some of the stuff done that you still need to get done.
mm-hmm.
I would say feeling very similar.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think in a couple, maybe it was our last episode, the episode before, we talked about how it's very easy, I think, to become numb to a lot of the things that are happening
Mm,
just in general. And
mm-hmm.
I think the past couple of weeks, I've like let myself not become numb almost. And so it's just like an
Mm-hmm.
influx
Yeah.
of everything. And I think the new job of that I'm at as well, and just trying to get accustomed to that. I've been at that for about a month now, and
Mm-hmm.
just figuring out what that looks like. So definitely um feeling, yeah, tired, feeling a little worn,
Mm,
but
mm-hmm.
trying to put into place practices that will refill me, practices
Yeah.
um that will not make me feel as worn and as tired.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad that you're, you know, putting those practices in place and being mindful of that. And I also think I really like that you are not letting yourself be numb, even though I would obviously understand and support if that was what you needed to do. But I think that it's very easy. It's very easy, and I've done this too, to feel just removed, to detach almost and like disassociate
Yes.
from what is happening. But I always think about this quote. I don't remember if it's actually if this is a quote by Cole Arthur Riley or if it was someone else she was quoting. I think she wrote it though. But the quote was like, protect the parts of you that wince, because it's basically like a reminder of
Mm.
your humanity. And um it's important to, yeah, it's important to remember that you are human.
Yeah. And because, right, like at a certain point, there's only so much you can control. And I think it's finding a balance, right? Of like, oh, I can only control XYZ,
Yeah.
versus like letting that be the only thing you focus on and just
Yes.
focusing on your life and whatever. But our lives are very intersectional, I think, as we continue to talk and we continue just to navigate
Mm-hmm.
life as women of color, as a Black woman, as an Asian American woman, like
Mm-hmm.
what that means.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But I'm glad we got to connect. How are y'all doing? Let us
Yes.
know on Instagram. Let us know on our YouTube comments,
Mhm.
wherever you're checking
Please.
in from.
Yeah. Please check in with, use this happen as an opportunity to check in with yourself if you haven't already today. And we
I
would love to
like
know.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to y'all that Emily is a therapist in another life. Like, I definitely know that she's a
It
therapist in
was,
another life.
yes, it was a consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows, it could still happen,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll pivot in like my 50s and I can be
Yes, we
one
could
of those
open a
like
practice
older.
together.
We could you
Yes.
supervise me? Can I get my hours with you? Are there conflicts of interest? Is that allowed? I don't know. Someone please
No,
answer.
I feel you could do that. We could totally work that out.
Yeah.
Oh
um
my gosh.
but I guess it kind of is a decent segue, I guess, into today's discussion, where we're going to be talking about something that I think, Kalen, you were probably the first person to introduce this term to me as in this context specifically. And it's called, we're talking about the weight today. And it's, yeah, a topic that both Kalen and I we have a lot of thoughts about and have been feeling or currently feeling, at least I speak for myself, like are currently feeling.
Yeah.
And so we kind of wanted to talk about it. The weight in this context is not about premarital. So if that is what you're looking for, that's not what this episode is, but you know,
we're not waiting for like,
yes, exactly. It's a different type of weight.
Definitely agree. We're not waiting on the ring either. Like we're not talking about waiting for your boyfriend to propose.
It's not really like a romantic. Yeah, maybe that's a better way to phrase it. This is in this context, the weight is not a romantic weight. We're talking about the professional weight.
Yes, and it's not. It's like it's personal too, right? Like it's not a weight that really requires anyone. I mean, obviously there's other people involved, but like,
right?
It's very much, I think, a personal thing, right?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I came upon this TikTok by Olivia Hill. We'll put it in the description or put it somewhere so that you all can see it. But she's basically like, if I could give any advice to my 20-year-old self, it would be to romanticize the weight, to enjoy the weight, to really take advantage of your 20s, take advantage of the moments, the opportunities that you have before the thing comes that you're really hoping for. And I know Emily and I talk a lot about, like, we know that we're going to be financially secure. We know that we are going to have careers that we enjoy, that are like giving, that allow flexibility. Like, we know all of these things, but right now in this moment, we are in the weight. And it's so hard sometimes. It's so hard to just be here and to live here. And I just think that we have so much to talk about in this topic. And I feel like a lot of people our age, Emily, are really experiencing this right now.
I think so too, for sure. Because it's something that is especially challenging when it feels like, you know, all of these things that you want, but it feels like you're constantly being told by whatever forces that be that you believe in, whatever higher power you believe in, that it's not yet. Like, it's not yet. And to be able to tangibly at least say certain things that you were wanting, like you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but just like flexibility or, you know, whatever you're talking about in terms of like what you want your life to look like. Not like knowing that and wanting it and not having, like, feeling as though it's not yet is really, it can be really frustrating. I feel like, at least there is a generational aspect to this. I mean, maybe I'm sure our parents and grandparents and whoever 100%. Are also like had a version of this, but I feel like, at least when I talk to my grandma, sometimes I really do think about the fact that she went straight from living with her parents to being married and living in a household and then having children of her own. And so it's not to say, right, that she didn't have her own like thoughts and feelings and whatnot, but she really didn't, this period kind of, you know, being a single person, however you define that, even if you're partnered, like it's kind of like she didn't really have that period of time. And this question of like, well, what's next? What do I want? It was very much like, this is what you're doing. Like, now you have a husband and now you have kids. And so that's kind of what you're doing now. So I think for us who feel maybe a little bamboozled, scammed, however you want to frame it, of the American dream, it's especially relevant because you're having to rethink that. But I guess before we talk a little bit more about it, I would love to know how, you know, you opened us up with the TikTok. I would just love to know how you think about and define the weight yourself, Kalen. Like, how do you think about it?
That's a great question. I would definitely say it's even changed over the last year, right? Like, I think it is ever evolving, and it really does depend on like, what is that thing that we're waiting for? Like, what is that end game that we're hoping for? And I think we've talked about it a lot, but I think especially over the last couple of years with the pandemic, like, I don't want to be working full time. Like, I don't want to have to be in one location all the time. I want to be able to access my community is everywhere. Like my community is not just here in like Michigan, like it's everywhere, and having access to the people I love is very important to me. And even the definition of people you love, right? It's no longer just like, it's just ever evolving. And so I think right now what the wait for me is really coming into that life of more freedom and more flexibility. And I think that has been the goal for the last couple of years, is like, what will get me to that freedom, to that flexibility the quickest. And I think, right, like a lot of it does come down, just because of the capitalist system that we live in, does come down to economics, right?
It
like
does. It
I
really
need a certain level of money to be free, especially as a millennial coming with student loans. Like there is a number that I know that is always in my mind of like, once I can get to this number, like forget the jobs, forget like whatever. But just to feel that sense of freedom is what I'm going for. And so my way is being patient in the jobs that I'm currently in the, even the physical place, right? I'm still at my parents' house, is being patient, knowing that greater things are coming, knowing that my own place is coming, like knowing that some of these different things that I want to do in my life that might not necessarily be tied to like an income, right? Like, I love doing this podcast. We've talked about like doing other creative things, but my bills need to be paid.
Right.
And so being in the wait and being like ready for those things when they come, and like having a good attitude about where I am right now, I think is kind of what my wait is looking like. But what is your wait looking like? Like what's happening for you?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what you said also really relates to me. I think that the pandemic, panorama, I don't know what the rules are around like saying specific words on it. Yes, it is. It is here. There are potential other pandemics that might be happening, everyone. So please keep staying alert. And I just think that over the course of this time, where I have had the opportunity to be remote, because this was something that I did not ever really see for myself, but I also think it's, now that I think a little bit more about it, it's just because I had never really had an example of someone who did that. And like both my parents, the jobs they worked, they went in, you had to like physically be there. Right. And so like when you don't even know that that's a possibility, I feel like why would that even be something on my radar? And something the pandemic showed me, and I think showed everyone, and why I continue to be frustrated by places that are like, well, let's try to like come back to the office. Let's be hybrid, for roles where you're not dealing with direct patient care. You're not physically having to like do something on site. Like obviously those jobs, please continue going in. But I think that's why I was like, well, we've shown that we can do this remotely. And if like your employees are telling you that they prefer it and like can have more time to do whatever, to basically like be happier, is what the gist of what I've been seeing a lot of things. Cause people are like, I have more time to spend with family. I have more time to take care of myself. Basically people are happier. And so like, I think that, or some, I don't want to say like universally, right, but like people are saying who want to stay remote that they're happier. And so for me, I've also reflected on like how much basically time has been kind of like given to me in a remote setting where I'm not commuting, where I'm not being in a workplace necessarily kind of, you know, maybe being distracted sometimes. And so I think that for me, the wait is twofold, at least what stands in my mind. The first being related to a career that, or a job, it doesn't even have to be a career, but a job that allows me to do all the things that you kind of touched on, like being able to travel to see my family. You know, Kalen knows this, but I've been like trying to apply to jobs. And I even met with a like person at a staffing agency who said most of her clients want hybrid. And I thought long and hard about it. And I was like, I want to be remote. And so I think for me, the flexibility, the kind of freedom to be able to see my community that is also not just only in Boston, and being able to like structure my time the way that I want to is really important to me. But I also think there's like a wider, more existential weight that's going on for me around like kind of waiting and wanting to feel, I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's verification that what I'm doing is the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know if it's um validation that like I'm good at what I'm doing, because none of those necessarily feel exactly correct, but it's almost like I'm waiting to have this feeling or sense of realization of like, oh, this is what you've wanted, and like now you've arrived at it. And so I think that feeling is something that I just really want to be able to, that sense of, yeah. I don't know if I described that very well. That was a very long-winded answer, but yeah, just feeling like, oh, this is the life that I want, and now it's actually the life that I'm living.
Yeah, and hearing you talking, I am thinking like, is this life for you that you imagine for sure connected to a career, or you're kind of still sussing
I
that
see what
out?
you're saying. I think that, I mean, you kind of talked about this too, but the realities of like living in a capitalist society where a lot of this is tied to money.
Yeah, literally.
And I think most of it is probably connected to work and connected to capital in one form or another. But I do think that's a good question. I do think there's actually also part of this that can't be answered with those two things. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess my hope would be that with those two things would come the other sense of security and like maybe sense
Yeah.
of peace, I guess. But maybe not. Maybe it means I have to do some more thinking.
Yeah, because I definitely like can understand the desire to feel like, oh, I've arrived. And even when we're talking about the weighted, almost like what are you waiting for, right? Like there has to be just the nature of waiting is you're waiting for something.
Or something.
And I think like that is sometimes the hard part, is that we don't know what we're waiting for.
Yeah.
Our grandparents, our parents, like they had this blueprint that was ready for them, that they knew, like, to your point, once I got out of high school, once whatever, however that happened for them, some of them go to high school, we know that. But once I reach this age, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a family, I'm going to go to my job every day, I'm going to retire, and that's going to be my life. That's no longer necessarily something that works for us. One, just capitalism wise, like,
right,
the money ain't money.
Yes.
But two, for our joy, for our sense of purpose, like that's not gonna fly. But the question then is, to your point, like, how are we imagining? Like, what are we imagining? If we haven't seen it before, like, how do we know? What do we want?
That's actually a really good point. And so maybe part of what I'm waiting for is to have an answer to those questions, which makes it even more existential, because it's like, as you said, I don't even know what I'm waiting for. And so how do I even like work towards what I'm waiting for if I don't even know what that is? Question to think about. I need to think about that. I don't know. I guess I would also be curious too. Like, is this something that, as we talk about like generations and stuff, like, is this something that you've talked to your parents about? Do you see this at all in kind of, even if it's not through a direct question and answer session or like some sort of discussion that you've had, like, what feelings, what vibes are you kind of getting or picking up on potentially of like how they even think about this, / is this even something that you feel like they've thought about or are thinking about?
Yeah. I think my conversations, like personally with my parents, have definitely been, it's so funny, like around like, okay, well, I think I said this before, but like once I graduated from grad school, I was like, okay, well, I want to be out by March. Didn't happen.
Yes.
Then I'm like, okay, well, I want to be out like by the end of the year is what I've been saying now. And in some respects, still like definitely, obviously, want to have my own space, want to do whatever. On my parents' front, they're kind of waiting. I think in the last couple of weeks, especially, I've seen even their career paths like not change, but continue to evolve. Like they're thinking of different things they can do, and they're thinking of ways that they can almost like finally enjoy some of the work that they're doing.
Okay. Yeah.
And one that's really freeing, right? To be like,
right,
they're in their 50s, late 50s, still figuring that
Step
out and
out
like still having opportunities
to do
to
that.
bring joy into their life.
Right.
But I'm also wondering, like, how can I do that now?
Earlier.
Like, how
Yeah.
can I do
Yeah.
that? Even in the middle of not knowing what I'm waiting for, even in the middle of trying to get more freedom, of trying to get more flexibility of whatever that is, like, how can we do that now? And I think that's one thing that is almost sad to think about sometimes, right? Is like our parents have waited forever. Did our grandparents even get to enjoy like
Mm-hmm.
their lives, to be so
Yeah.
honest? I don't
Yeah.
know. Just because they did achieve whatever that was they were supposed to achieve, did they actually enjoy any of
Yeah.
that?
No, that's a good way of putting it too. And I think also a follow-up question and like thought I guess I would have is when you talk to people our age, I
Mm-hmm.
know we said that probably a lot of people could relate to this, but I do think that when I talk to some of my friends, they're like,
Speak on it.
I don't really know what you're talking about. And I don't think it's
Yep.
because they don't say it in like a mean way. They don't say it in
Mm-hmm.
like a what's wrong with you type way. But sometimes I do like I will vocalize certain things and I'll be like, they'll kind of look at me like, well, I mean, I like have my husband, I'm going to work, I have a house. Like they
Mm-hmm.
kind of are like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
really
I love that for them.
feel, yes, I'm like, I don't really feel, this kind of questioning really. They're like, maybe if
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it, like if I sat down and intentionally was like, well, let me think about the ways that maybe I don't answer questions that I have that I don't have the answer to, like then something would come up. But I feel like for
Mm-hmm.
me, this is something I think about a lot. And so I'm curious if, yeah, if your friends, what that discussion looks like with your other friends and like have, are other
Yeah.
people like actually, because now I'm like saying this, I'm like, are other people feeling this too? Or
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people are feeling it. I one question I have before I speak, are those friends, are they?
yes, they are.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Understood. So, right, like for
Yes.
them, a lot of life has probably panned out the way they thought it was going to, right? Like the
That
system
is
is set up
true.
that
Hmm. Yeah.
it's most of the time gonna work in their favor.
Yes.
I would say for a lot of my friends who are Black women, who are
Yeah.
Latina, like we've had to
Yeah.
make our own visions,
Mm.
our own
Hmm.
paths, because I think we talked about this last week, even like a lot of our past, a lot of the image that is out there for us
Yeah.
is one of service, right? Like I'm either going to
Mm-hmm.
grow up to be a mom, I'm going to grow up to be a nurse, I'm going to grow up to be a social worker, and right, like these things are not inherently bad. We need nurses, we need social
Right.
workers, we need moms, but why do I always got to give?
Right.
Why do I always
No,
got to
it's
give?
true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it comes back to the question, to your point, of people questioning, like, this is not working for me. The way we
Mm-hmm.
got this set up isn't working for me. And I think back also to some of my friends who are queer and don't fit into this
Right.
typical
Mm-hmm.
heteronormative American family idea, like this stuff is
Right.
not working. It's
It
not
really
working.
isn't.
And we
Yeah.
have to envision something else. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And I know this really wasn't kind
About
of
liberation, but
our
like, let's go
liberation,
there. Yeah.
right? But I'm wondering, like,
Yeah.
what does that look like for you?
Yeah.
What do you imagine it
What
looks
do I
like?
imagine? This is, and I feel like that's part of what's challenging is that when you, yeah, when you're with growing up within a system, it's very hard to imagine something where that does not exist. Um, but I guess an aspect of it would be, and I know there's like different tenets of this. I have to like look up exactly what I'm thinking of. And hopefully I'll insert it here. But I think a very crucial piece of this for me at least is the ability for myself, for everyone really, especially those within the current systems who have historically been like marginalized, excluded, and also like actively basically persecuted or like killed. um I think that being able for everybody to live in a place where they are cared for their needs, like as we kind
Mhm.
of talk about, like basic needs are just met without any sort of condition, without any sort of like you have to be doing X in order to get this. So like food, water, shelter, literally like, and I would actually argue even beyond just basic needs if we're talking about liberation. Like I want people to be able to like have joy, and like I think that to be
Yeah.
able to do those things, yes, it's basic needs, we can start with that discussion, but it's also more than that. And I think being able to, that is one crucial piece, and also just feeling in like community and having a community, and being in community with people
Mhm.
is really another piece of that for me. And I think it does go into to being cared for and being loved, and part of that is like those around you, and the
One
things around
name.
you, they're able
And one
to
of my
have
good
that,
friends
to have
growing
that
up,
happen.
Martisa Williams, like
Abolition of
she
quite a few structures as well, because I think that has to happen in order for liberation to be possible. I saw something online that was like abolition is really the presence of more things, not the absence of things. And I think that
Mm.
reframe has really helped me better think about.
Yeah, no, I just want to quickly cite my sources. Ebony Janice always talks about citing your sources. And I think the first people who have really talked about like this liberation piece for me, my first access point into liberation was definitely Ebony Janice. Check her out on Instagram, Ebony Janice. He, for me, has opened my eyes to a lot of like alternative ways of living and like not having to live in this um way that makes us sad, that makes us like unjoyful. You know what I'm saying? Like just basic things that I'm like, oh
Yeah.
wow, you don't have to continue at a job that you don't like. Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
to live in this state you don't like. Like, and it goes back to representation, right? Like if you don't see it or you don't talk about it, you don't know that it's a possibility for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think part of our waiting, especially as it relates to liberation, is it almost feels like we are at like a tipping point, right? Like
Mm,
who knows any day what is going to happen.
mm-hmm.
Just it just feels like very fraught in general, the government, whatever,
No, yeah,
whatever.
I
That I think
agree.
adds to these
Yeah.
feelings.
And it's also, it also feels like, to your point about a tipping point, that it, we could choose to move in a direction of towards
We
liberation.
could,
We could
we could.
choose. However, it feels like, and if history is any indicator, it feels like that will not happen. And I think that that's
Mhm.
also why it is frustrating, because it's like, again, to your point, to our point about the wait, it's like once you know these things that are possible, that you want, the kind of discrepancy of not being able to get there is incredibly frustrating. So I guess
Yeah.
with, in those moments of frustration and you know and feelings, I guess, how are you coping with the wait? What do you do?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would say even our friendship, I think, is very central and grounding for me to always get like a pulse check of,
Mm.
is it just me or
No, no,
is
no,
this like
no, no, it's the
is
same. Yeah.
this like what's happening right now?
Yeah.
And I think just having right a community of support, a community of
Mm-hmm.
like-minded folks who you might not agree on like every point, but having a central grounding point of like, this is, it's not just you, this
Mm-hmm.
is wild, like we're all navigating this.
Yeah.
I'm also dreaming of a new future with you. Like things like that have been very grounding for me. And then I think in the day-to-day, just like meditation, try the meditation. I know sometimes it can feel almost like a band-aid, but I think
Mm-hmm.
for me at least, being able to center myself when everything else around me just seems like, how can I control any of it, grounding
Yeah.
myself and being like, okay, what is my next step, even if it's not like what
Mm-hmm.
are my next 10 steps, like maybe it's just get a sip of water or shut down the computer for the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. It's
But
true.
having those small moments have been very grounding for me. And then journaling and affirmations as well. Like, I know, even I said it today, like, I know you'll be financially secure. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know freedom is coming. I know flexibility is coming. I know we won't be working forever. Like,
Yeah.
ah, just having to say those words
Same.
out loud and start believing them
Yes,
um,
that's true.
has
Mm-hmm.
been helpful for me. What are some things that you've been have been supporting you?
Yeah. I think oh, again, a lot of it is similar, but it really is having a source of community and support around me. And yeah, not everyone has to have the same like understanding of this ideas.
Right.
But I think being able to really feel as though you can talk to them about it. And even if, yeah, even if they don't understand, just that the presence of like, okay, like I hear what you're saying. I can tell that these are things that matter to you and that you're struggling with. And I am like in community with you as you try to figure it out, even if it's not me also wanting those exact things, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So I think for me, that's really important. And of course, like our friendship as well is a constant source of just pause. And I think that, and reflection and yeah, just kind of being like, is it me? Is it everybody else? Is it both? Like what's happening? And I do think for me as well, like being able to sit in my feelings a little bit, sitting in sadness has been something that I have had to get a little bit better at, I think, because for a while, like I'm a pretty like empathetic and emotional and like very sensitive person, especially to like other people's feelings and kind of like energies. And so I think that for me, for a while, I used to like try to avoid it. I was like, avoid. I don't want to feel this. Like, I don't want to like, this is causing me to react in a certain way, especially if it's like crying. I'm like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. But what I have learned is really sometimes I just have to sit in my feelings and I have to
let them flow.
Yeah. And I have to sit in this frustration, and that's okay. Like, I think for me being able to vocalize too, to switch from like saying, I'm noticing that I'm feeling this way, because the thing about feelings too, I think like Temi says this a lot, but she's like, feelings can be very fickle. Like you can feel things that doesn't necessarily always mean that they are your reality. So like, if I'm feeling like I'm not good enough for this job, that's not necessarily true. That's just what your feelings are telling you. So being able to say, I'm noticing that I'm feeling this, processing that, and then identifying why I may be feeling that way, and being able to do that myself, also being able to do that with friends and whoever else has also been really helpful for me as we go through the weight, because you're definitely, as cliche as it sounds, like you're definitely not alone in the weight. So yeah,
no, you're not alone. And I think that's really why even this podcast exists, right? Like we want to normalize that you're not alone. It's really difficult sometimes, it's really great sometimes, and then it's really meh other times.
Yes, that's the other thing. Sometimes it's like highs, lows, but also sometimes the hardest thing to feel is like the in-betweens of just like, I don't know, like to an extent it's almost, I don't want to say numbness, but you're kind of like, I don't even feel anything. Like that's not. And sometimes that can be scary too. You're like, I want to feel something.
And on a serious note, if you all are ever feeling like this is too much, like I am feeling numb, like I don't want to feel numb, and like I really need to talk to a professional, like 100%. Please seek therapy. Please seek emergency services if that's what you need. Like we know no meditation, no yoga, no sitting in your feelings is going to overcome some of those deeper things. So definitely please seek out resources if that is something that you need. And we'll put some in our description and our wherever you are. You'll find them. We'll make sure they're there.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
But as we're wrapping up here, as we do, you know how we like to end it here.
Yes.
What are some things that you need clarity on, Emily?
Yes. So the biggest, the main thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this earlier, at least, was I want to know, I would like a little bit of clarity, please, from anyone who might have insight into this. Why did I get an Essence magazine? I don't say this as like because I don't like Essence magazine. It's Janet Jackson's cover. I'm definitely not mad at receiving it, but I'm just confused because I don't remember subscribing to it ever. And I'm pretty sure you have to pay for it. Like, I don't think it's one of those free magazines. I don't think so.
Essence is a little pricey. Yeah.
Right. So, and my name is on it and my address is on it. So it very clearly was sent to me. So if anybody knows how that happens, please tell me, because I've also looked at my bank statements and I'm not seeing any sort of charges. So,
or if you've sent Emily the Essence,
yes, please tell me.
Please let her know.
Yes, I'm happy to continue receiving them. I haven't read this one yet, but I want to. But yes,
I
I'm
miss
just
magazines.
confused. Yes, magazines are honestly are really great. And I remember when I was younger, I would always go to the store and like look at this is, but I would look at like Tiger Beat and J14. I don't know if
Yes, of
anybody else.
course.
Kalen, tell me what you need clarity on.
Yeah, this week I just need a little bit of clarity on when periods are supposed to stop kicking your butt. I've been watching a couple of TikToks of people like older aunties being like, well, here's a tea, blah, blah, blah. Let me know, what does the aging process look like? Like, what does that look like? My body is
Yes.
tired. I might be 26, but my body is tired. And I want to start putting in measures, right? So I can continue to live a life where my body does what I need it to do. And I know that's not always possible. And I actually know that was an ableist statement. So I will take that back and acknowledge that that was very ableist of me to say I need my body to do what it always needs to do. But I would just like a preview, a general preview, I think, of does it ever stop? And will I always be in pain? And if I am, like, just let me know, right? Like, just
Yes.
let me know.
I need to prepare. Yeah.
Yes, yes. With that we're at the end of our show. Thank you again for tuning in today. We can't wait to see you next time. And
we'll see you when we see you. Bye.
bye.